So we were just starting to finish talking about the anatma, all that I am not. We looked at the 11 components of the anatma and the 3 different classifications, the Shariratrayam, which was based on the subtlety, the Kosha Panchakam based on the functionality, and we said we know that now that Stula Shariram in this classification is same as Annamaya Kosha. The Shukshma Shariram was divided into Pranamaya, Manomaya, and Vijnanamaya Kosha in the Panchakosha method. And the Karana Shariram was the same as the Anandamaya Kosha. Right? So, and then we also talked about the Avastatrayam classification, the different states experienced by these 3 bodies. Thus far, the author told us that I am not this gross physical body. I am not even the mind belonging to the subtle body, nor am I the seed which is the cause of these 2. I may experience this waking world as Vishwa along with others and have shared experiences. Every night I enter a Swapna Prapancha as Tejasa, which is created purely out of the mind's vasanas. And as Prajna, I experience the blankness and bliss of Shushupti. But I am none of these that I experience. So functionally, one could divide everything I'm aware of into 5 sheets, but I'm distinct from all these which I'm aware of. These are not the real I. These are simply the superficial personalities of mine. Then who am I? The author thus told us that Atma is the only real I. It is the only Satyam, but he didn't yet tell us what exactly is Atma. So we had a rough description before. It is that the Atma is the invisible, immortal inner essence of the individual. So your patience will be rewarded very soon because we're going to enter the profound topic of Atma. Well, very soon, because before that, the author will again quickly summarize what we are not and his arguments for this. At the end of your page 12, we will chant. You can repeat after me. You can unmute yourself. Madhiyam shariram.
Madhiyam shariram.
Madhiya pranaha.
Madhiya
pranaha.
Madhiyam manascha.
Madhiyam manascha.
Madhiya buddhihi.
Madhiya buddhihi.
Madhiyam ajnanamiti.
Madhiyam ajnanamiti.
Svena.
Svena.
Nyayate tadyata.
Nyayate tadnyata.
Madhiyatvena jnatam.
Madhiyatvena jnatam.
Katakakundalagrihadikam.
Katakakundalikargharikam.
Swasmad vinnam.
Tasmat vinnam.
Tata panchakoshadikam.
Tatha panchakoshadikam.
Swasmad vinnam.
Swasvabinnam.
Madhiyatvena jnatmam.
Madhiyatvena kyatmam.
Atmana bhavati.
Atmana bhavati.
Thank you. So the author gives a very clever argument here. We talked about it, we referred to it briefly when we were discussing earlier, that whatever I possess or use, whatever that I can claim as me, as mine, is not me. It belongs to me, but it is not myself. When we say my car, my house, we may be very attached to this car and this house, We use this car and house extensively, but we don't have any confusion that I'm the house or the car. I have a phone, but I'm not this phone. I have a dog, but I'm not a dog. You may have a child and see a lot of yourself in that child, but you know that the child is not you, hopefully. Similarly, all the Panchakosha or the Shariratrayam that we claim as our possessions are mine, but are not me. These are simply a temporary medium through which I interact with the world. And just like I'm using this car to go around the world, when we look at how we refer to any of the Panchakosha, you'll see that I will say my body, my mind, my intellect, that they belong to me. Hence, these are all different from me that I claim as mine. These are not me. That's what the author is saying. Madiyam Shariram. Madiyam means belonging to me. We say things like, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I've put on weight. We basically mean that the body is tired, the body is hungry, the body has put on weight. We never say I, the body, we always say my body. Hence, from this argument that the author is giving us, concludes that I'm not the body. The physical body, we say, is Annamaya Kosha. This is what is referred to by Madiyam Shariram in the phrase. Then he says, Madiya Pranaha. When we talk about things like my digestion is weak, my breathing is heavy, the doctor says my circulation has not been so good of late. Again and again, we talk of these things as belonging to me. Hence, it must be understood that it is distinct from me. Pranaha is referring to the Pranamaya Kosha. Madiyam Manascha. When we say things like, I feel disturbed, I'm happy, I feel peaceful after that meditation, we mean that my mind feels these things. The mind is disturbed, etc. We talk of the mind, my mind, like it is something possessed by me, and hence it cannot be me. Manascha, mind, here referring to the Manomaya Kosha. Madiya Buddhi, again referring to the Vijnanamaya Kosha, my intellect, which so many of us are so attached to. Madiya Jnanam, referring to the ignorance. I may talk of my ignorance, but this again does not belong to me. This refers to the Anandamaya Kosha. Svena Jnata. All these known as mine, the author gives us a few examples. Kataka, bangle, kundala, earring, griham, house. The author here takes examples of very valuable things because in these cases, our sense of ownership is very strong. Strong mamakara is there. The house is taken because we live in it. It is comparable with the body. There is a lot of punyam which is required for both these things to be acquired. Madiyatven Ajnatmam. These are all claimed as mine. Swasmadilkam, and hence different from me. Tata, likewise. Panchakoshadikam, that which is composed of the 5 sheets. Atmana bhavati, is not I, the Atma. We know when we were doing that, the Panchakosha, we went from the gross to the subtler things, like the mind and the emotions. We did this because the Viveka becomes a bit harder to practice as we go to these subtler things. Not many of us are likely to confuse our object possessions to be us. We may be very attached to these or to the people in our life or our body, but it's still not so difficult to practice Viveka there. However, when we start coming to the mind and the emotions, deeper things like I'm feeling sad or I'm quite clever, the Viveka becomes harder to practice. And this is normal. So hence practice with the grosser things and it'll become easier with the subtler things. Like when your car gets a scratch or you lose a favorite shirt, practice your Viveka then. Because ultimately, all such experiences are practice for when you have to hand over your most prized possession, that is this body and mind at the time of death, to Ishvara. We have to remember that both the Stula and Sukshma Shariram are made of matter. One is the grossification of the 5 elements, and the other is the subtle aspect of the 5 elements. The visible part is matter and the gross, and the invisible part is the energy. But however, these are all just matter and energy. The body and mind, where all these emotions arise and pass, are of the same nature. If they are of the same nature, then must they not be of the same level of existence? What is the nature of this? Is it sentient or non-sentient, insentient? We can conclude that it is jada, inert, insentient. It is insentient and cannot hence produce sentiency. You eat food, the food gets converted in the body as energy, and it's logical that it doesn't become sentient. Matter cannot produce sentiency. So the sentiency that is perceived is a borrowed one. Like the moonlight is the borrowed sunlight with lower intensity. What makes the body and mind sentient must be another source, something of another nature. It cannot belong to the same level of reality. If it was the same nature as matter, it wouldn't have the same capacity to animate it. This special something we call Atma. Atma is the spiritual principle. We take for granted that this consciousness principle belongs to the body mind, like if the light of the moon would belong to the moon. This confusion has to be cleared. So then we come to the critical question, the main part of the text that everything else so far was in preparation for, of what exactly is Atma. Before we enter this topic, any questions? Okay, good. So let's continue. On your page 13, we will chant. Atma tarhi kaha
Atma
आत्मानैकः
Satchidananda Swarupaha
सच्चिदानन्दस्वरूपः
Tat Kim
Satkim
Kalatreyapi Tishtatiti Sat
Kalatrayapi
सत्
Sat
Chit Kim
Chitkim
Jnana Swarupaha
ज्ञानस्वरूपः
Anandah Kaha
Anandakaha
Sukha Swarupaha
Sukhaswarupaha
Evam Satchidananda Swarupam
सच्चिदानन्दस्वरूपम्
Svatmanah Vijaniyat. Thank you. So the author says, Tarhi then, if I'm distant from all these, that is 11 components that we talked about, what is Atma? The answer comes, Satchidananda Swarupa. The student obviously doesn't get any spark of enlightenment just from hearing these words. So it's continued. Sat Kim, what is Sat? Kalatreya pi tishtatiti Sat. So Sat it can be translated as absolute existence. So what is this absolute existence? The answer says Kalatreyapi, that which exists in all 3 periods of time. that is the past, present, and future, is Sat. When we talk about Kala, time, it is also a created concept. At this very moment, I can talk about the past or the future. But what exactly is the present moment? Is it this second, this microsecond? The present actually has no length of time. It's over before I can talk about it. If I try to divide this present time, it becomes either the past or the future. So when we say, oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot to. Okay, now it's recording. I thought the recording was not happening. So continuing, the present actually has no length of time, I was saying. It's over before I can even talk about it. So if I try to divide this present time, it becomes either the past or the future, right? So we say that Kala is Kalpita, a superimposed concept. Just like the pot made of clay, the pot was just name and form superimposed on the clay. Anything Kalpita is dependent on something else for existence. But Sat is eternal, Nityam. Sat is beyond the 3 periods of time. In the pot example, the clay existed before the pot came into being. The clay is there when the pot is in existence, and the clay will be there when the pot is destroyed. So in that limited example, clay alone will continue to exist. So similarly, let's look at our experience, our different experiences of the world. Yes, there is the world and objects in it we experience, and there is a order of experiencing them. For our comprehension of the world, 2 concepts are there that are the basis of our experience: time and space. When I point to this object, I'm pointing to this object in a particular point in time. It exists in this time, in this place. It doesn't have any existence beyond this time and this particular space that it is occupying. It exists now, but it's not going to be the same in the next minute, right? It might not seem so, but taking another example, take the example of this body. From the minute to minute that you're looking at me, it might appears to be the same, but say if I were to set up a time-lapse video and videoed myself every day, and then you watch that time-lapse over a period of 25, 30 years in fast-forward mode, then you can see the changes, right? Just because the changes are not perceptible, it doesn't mean that the changes are not happening. So every second, every fraction of a second, there is a change. So just because we don't see the change doesn't mean there isn't one. The very disconcerting fact is that you never come across the same object or the same person again, ever. Yet we form relationships, we get married even, and we bemoan the fact that the person has changed. Whereas whenever you're looking at an Atma, change is the only constant. So what actually is constant, permanent, not changing? Shastra tells us that it's Brahman or Atman. Sat here is existence. It's the very substance of everything that can be experienced. It can be used synonymously with Chit, which we will discuss next. The same way that the heat and light principle of a fire go hand in hand, Sat and Chit go together. So time consciousness is Sat. Object consciousness is Sat. It is said very poetically sometimes, and I like this phrase very much. What I'm conscious of is constantly changing, but that I am conscious is unchanging. I'll repeat it once more. What I'm conscious of is constantly changing, but that I am conscious is unchanging. Sat is that which cannot be negated. Hence, we call it abaditam sat, which means it cannot be negated. The manifestation of Sat can take many names and forms, but the essence remains the same. I exist is the only thing which is changed, which is unchanging. We must claim this unchanging, absolute existence as I. Before moving on to Chip, do you have any questions on what I said?
You said that Kal is Kalpit.
So yes, Kalpita means superimposition.
Or okay. So then,
Just
the Shadvikara that transpires
Mhm.
does transpire obviously over a period of time, right? So
Yes.
why do we call it Kalpit?
I'm not aware of that we call it Kalpit. I can check on that and get back to you.
Yeah, I mean, time, the concept of time is very vague still, although everybody refers to it, at least in this real world, or whatever we
Mhm.
think is real world,
Right.
existing world. But I think there is a concept that time is still not a real thing,
Yes.
or that is with eternity.
So time belongs to this Vyavaharika, right? If you remember the levels of reality that we're talking about. So the Shadvikara you're talking about also belongs to this Vyavaharika level of reality. Correct? So these all belong to this transactional level of reality. We're saying at the higher level of reality, looking at it from the point of view of the Paramatika, these are all just superimpositions. Just like the name and form cup is just a superimposition on the clay.
One more small question. Is there any part of Shastra which sort of goes in detail about Kala?
There probably is. I mean, we'll keep referring to the concept of Kala here and there. So when we talk about this Upanishad, Katha Upanishad, right, which has Lord Yama also. Lord Yama is also known as Kala. Lord of Death is used synonymously with Kala also. So you'll find references various points, but talking extensively about the concept of Kala, I'm not aware. I could check on that.
Like Atma is always the big deal, and Kala should be there somewhere, I feel.
Uh-huh. But when we talk about eternal, right, what exactly is Kala?
It's continuous motion or continuous.
So when
I
you
mean,
talk about eternal, what is the past? What is the future? When you talk about, we also said that creation is cyclical, right? So this world comes into being, it gets resolved, goes into an unmanifest state. So we said what we call the creation of the universe is basically just the universe coming into manifestation and going back to unmanifestation. And this process is cyclical. So in that cyclical process, what came before? You can't really talk about it.
the reference to Kalatrayepi seems
Mhm.
like at least Tattva Bodha believes a concept of time.
So we use words which all have a certain limitation, all right? So because all this dialogue also belongs to the level of Vyavaharika. So we are really, well, we are describing the process of describing Atma. We are really talking about something which cannot be truly described. So we have to use references of things we know. Like when I keep giving you the example of this cup or something, there is no really, so I said in that limited example, clay is permanent, but it's not really, it's just for the purpose of that example. So similarly, when we talk about kala in this, we say Atma is something which exists in all three periods of time. It's for our understanding of based on what time is, but in the same explanation, I explained how kala is kalpita. Kala is also a superimposition, right? Because I said how you can't really talk about what is present. So Nagaraj has a comment. You can speak it out, Nagaraj.
Yeah, thank you, Spandanaji. Just a question on, is there more detail on time in Shrutis? In Shrutis, it is not there, but in Puranas, it's very it is given in detail, Vishnu Purana, etc.
Okay.
And also there is description of relativity of it. I think there is a story of Kakabhushandi and also a king from Surya Vamsha who went to Brahma to get a son-in-law for her daughter. And by the time he came back, he had already, even though it was just a moment for him to go to Brahmaloka and Satyaloka and come back, they had already finished thousands and thousands of lifetimes on the earth where they were. So it's in detail described as to the extent of what is a Kali Yuga, how long is the Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Treta Yuga, etc. And also Brahma's one day, Brahma's Pralaya, etc. So all this concept is given in detail on Kala in Puranas.
Okay. Very interesting. Thank you. Yeah,
So that
so
we can
we
conclude
talk
that.
about.
So definitely that means the concept of time can be called as valid. Since they're
In the
given such.
Vyavaharika, yeah.
The concept of time is valid, but Atma is beyond the time. That's what Spandanaji is saying here, isn't it? Am I interpreting it correct?
Yes, that's correct. So we're talking about the Paramatmika Satyam right now, which belongs to a higher level of reality. So we can still use the concept of time to talk about Vyavaharika as we understand it. We are saying that the author is telling us that Atma is beyond that concept of time that we have. Yeah, let's continue. So coming to Chit Kim, the authors gave us the answer, Jnana Swarupaha. So what is Chit? It is the nature of pure consciousness, which it is also known as Chaitanyam, Jnanam, Vijnanam, the consciousness principle because of which the body is alive, makes this bundle of inert matter sentient. That's what we're talking about. That's what makes this body capable of feeling and experiencing the surroundings, makes this body different from this inert cup. So let's explore a little further. What is the truth of the world we comprehend? When I see this object, I have cup comprehension. You can say this cup is made of clay, then you have a constitute comprehension of what this cup is made of. But what is all this comprehension minus the object? What's left? It's pure consciousness alone. The author said that Chit is Jnana Swarupa. Jnanam is comprehension. That comprehension which is present behind every comprehension. Any particular cognition is Jnanam. For any object cognition, right? But when you that cognition minus the object, that pure cognition which is left behind when you remove the object, that is Chit. Like we said before, Chit can be used synonymously with Sat. So it is that which exists in all three periods of time, that which exists during every cognition, that which is the Sat, that which is the Sat of every object is Chit. We talk about 5 principles or capsules of Vedanta, which are very important. So please do make a note of these when you're re-listening to the recording later on. So the 5 capsules that we talk about is that consciousness is not a property of the body. Like the height belongs to the body, weight, color belongs to the body. But sentiency is not a property of the body. Consciousness is not a part of the body. Like the hair or the skin or the nails are part of the body. Consciousness is not a part of the body. Consciousness is not a product of the body. Like cells are created in the body, enzymes, blood are created in the body. Similarly, in the mind, thoughts and emotions will arise. But the mind or body cannot create consciousness, cannot make it alive. So the first capsule is that consciousness is not a property, part, or product of the body. The second capsule is that consciousness is an invisible, independent entity which pervades the body and makes the body alive. So let's take the example of the invisible electricity, which makes the visible fan active, right? So this electricity, we know, is not a property, part, or product of the fan. The electricity existed before the existence of the fan. It's an independent entity, which is simply making the fan active. The otherwise inert fan becomes alive, you can say, because of the electricity. So that's the second capsule, that consciousness is an independent entity which pervades the body and makes the body alive. The third capsule is that this invisible, independent consciousness is not limited by the boundaries of the body. It extends beyond the body. This consciousness doesn't have a height or width. These belong to the body alone. It is not confined to these spatial boundaries of the body. Just like electricity is not bound to the body of the fan. The length of the fan, the length belongs to the fan alone, not to the electricity. Consciousness is boundless, limitless, sarvagataha, we say, all-pervading. So the third capsule talked about how consciousness is not limited by space. And the fourth capsule talks about how consciousness is not limited by time. This consciousness will continue to survive even when the body medium dies. So if the bulb is broken and no light is coming out because it's broken, we know that it's because the bulb is damaged. It's not, we don't assume that there is no electricity. So similarly, just like the electricity extends beyond the life of the bulb, consciousness is eternal, nityam. You, the Atma, are never born, you never die, and the body may come and go, but you are eternal. The surviving consciousness cannot be recognized by us when the medium of the body is not there. That's the fifth capsule. That the surviving consciousness cannot be recognized not because it's not there, but because the reflecting medium of the body is no longer available. If in a room, the only outlet for electricity was the bulb which is broken, you can't perceive the electricity anymore. But it's only because the object which was reflecting that is no longer available. Like we kept saying, Atma is aprameya. It is not perceptible to any of the senses. It's only a reflection which is recognizable. So recognize this Atma as I. We have to train to recognize this consciousness as I and apply the 5 capsules on myself, right? So I'm not a part, product, or property of the body. I'm an invisible, independent entity which pervade this body and make the body alive. I'm not limited by the spatial or the time boundaries of this body. I will continue to survive even after this body dies. But I might not be available to perception once the medium of the body is not there. So the one, it's one of the Mahavakyas tells us, Pragnyanam Brahma, that consciousness is Brahman. And 2 more will tell you, Aham Atma Brahma, this self is Brahman, and Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. And finally, the 4th Mahavakya will tell you, Tattvamasi, thou art that. This consciousness is Brahman or Atman, and I am this Brahman or Atman. I am this consciousness. It's trying to drop that incorrect claim that this body is I, that these emotions or intellect are I, or this ignorance is I. I am this immortal, invisible inner essence alone. I am the consciousness temporarily possessing this body. Just like in deep sleep, the mind is resolved, but I survive. And so even when this body drops, I survive. To claim this consciousness as I, Lord Krishna also gives us the method of Dridrishya Viveka in Bhagavad Gita. It's a way to meditate on our own true nature, a way to know that I, the experiencer subject, the Drik, am always different from the experienced, experienceable object. For everything that is experienced, take this desk I'm sitting on or the wall behind me, right? This whole world, the trees outside, all these are experienced by me, including this body. This is experienced by me, and hence it is not me. This is also called the Neti method, right? Not this, not that. The whole world is experienced, and I am the experiencer. Extending to the body, I experience this body in the waking state, another in the dream state. I don't experience nothing of this body in the sleep state, and yet I, the experiencer, am always there. You can also apply to all your pranic conditions, the physiological conditions like hunger, sleepiness, the emotions, personality traits. You might think you're compassionate or short-tempered, but all these are experienced by me, right? So same with the mind and the intellect. I know what I know. I know what I don't know. The ignorance is also experienced by me. Finally, after negating everything, we come to the blankness. But the blankness is also experienced by me or not. So I am that eternal experiencer. I'm the Sarva Abhava Sakshi, that eternal consciousness principle, the witness of everything, even the blankness. So drop these misconceptions and pay more attention to the Drik, and you will see that it is so much more fascinating than the Drishya. Any questions? It's definitely a lot to think about
Yeah,
and
so one of the
contemplate on.
ways to reach Atma is through the Neti Neti method.
It's one of the ways to, yes, meditate. That's why we talk about everything which is perceivable, right? So we, like we said from the beginning, it's not just that we don't know our true nature. We also have a confusion about our true nature. When we say I currently, a lot of the times we talk about the I in terms of this body or emotions or intellect or all that. So we have to negate all that to arrive at the real I. So Neti Neti is, yes, very critical meditation technique to arrive at my true nature. Okay, so let's take the last bit of Atma. It said Ananda Kaha Sukha Swarupaha Evam Satchidananda Swarupam Swatmanam Vijaniyat. So the text said, what is Ananda or wholeness? And the answer came, Sukha Swarupa. It is the nature of absolute bliss or happiness. Evam, in this manner, Vijaniyat, may one know Swatmanam, one's own self, Satchidananda Swarupam, of the nature of existence, consciousness, wholeness. So putting that together, what is Ananda? It is the form of happiness. In this manner, may one know oneself to be the nature of existence, consciousness, and wholeness. So the truth of Sukham, happiness, is wholeness. Think of any moment of happiness in your life, moment of complete, full happiness. What exactly is happening in that moment? What's happening is that the subject-object division is removed, right? So imagine you've been craving a really good chocolate ice cream all day, and you finally get that chocolate ice cream in your hand, and you take those first few licks, and it's exactly what you wanted. What's happening in that moment? There is nothing outside you that you really want in that moment, right? So that whole subject-object division got removed, removing any sense of deficiency that you had. It might just be momentary, but that moment, that division is completely removed. In that moment, the experience of that wholeness is there. So that is the truth or the secret behind this feeling of happiness. It's that wholeness, which is why Ananda is also synonymously used with Ananta, meaning limitless, or Purnaha, full, complete. Shastra tells us that the root of all misery in life is this mistaken sense of apurna, incompleteness. Because I feel incomplete, it gives rise to desires, where I mistakenly think that if I have something else, I will be happy, that I will be fulfilled. And there is this story of a dog we use, that this street dog finds an old bone, and he happily picks it up, and he starts chewing on the bone to get what's inside. So he chews and chews and chews, and finally the bone breaks, and the shards of the bone cut the mouth of the dog, and some blood comes out. And the dog tastes this blood, and it thinks, now it's gotten to the good part of the bone. So it chews more and more, and more blood comes out, and keeps tasting that blood and feeling very happy that it found this amazing bone. Right? So Shastra is telling us that us seeking happiness from external things, from the outside, is like this dog chewing on the bone. What did that blood actually belong to? It belonged to the dog itself. Similarly, when we chase these external things and we think they're giving us happiness, all that's happening is it's creating conducive conditions for our mind to be calm and for this ananda, which is my nature anyway, for this ananda to get better reflected in that calm mind. That's what's happening. So that ananda is always available, right? So it doesn't mean you can't enjoy things of the world, you cannot enjoy objects or people of the world, but you must always be aware that this happiness that I feel is not coming because of this external object or person. It's my own inner ananda which is getting reflected. And hence, if that person or object goes away, we can fall back on our UPS, our uninterrupted pleasure supply, which is our own inner ananda. This inner ananda will always be available when we know and acknowledge and accept our own Purna nature. Right? It's only this feeling of Apurnaha which leads to, desires. These desires will, when these desires are fulfilled, it often leads to greed and attachment. If the desires are not fulfilled, they lead to anger or sadness. These desires lead to action, and action leads to accumulation of karma. And we saw that accumulated karma is what is responsible for the birth of this body. And hence the wheel of samsara keeps going. Shastra is telling you to claim your true nature as Purna. Purna is expressed as happiness, and lacking is expressed as sorrow. Shastra is telling you that this ananda, fullness, bliss is our intrinsic nature. Think about it. Doesn't happiness feel natural, intrinsic to you? Because none of us will ever think that I'm feeling too happy. Let me try to get rid of a bit of this happiness. Has any of you ever thought that? We don't, because this happiness is intrinsic to us. But when it comes to any other feeling like sadness, anger, we try to get rid of these feelings because they're not intrinsic, natural to us. When you accept this Purna nature, it will be expressed as, I don't need anything else to be happy. I don't miss anything. And so you can continue enjoying the things of the world which are pleasurable, knowing that that pleasure is coming from within you. But even when it's not there, you know that that ananda is always available to you. So that's the summary of Atma, what we must claim as ourselves. This Tat Chit Ananda Swarupa is me. Yes, Induji, you have a question? No? Anyone else has a question?
I have experienced that though. I mean, you crave something and then you keep going at it and you have that moment of clarity and focus, and then again you're running after something. It is true that, you need to keep falling back on that inner ananda.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because desires by themselves are endless, you know.
Yes. Yes.
So you can fulfill one desire, but a new one will take its
Another
place.
one takes place.
So for everyone who comes to Vedanta, it's because you've experienced some bit of that disillusionment. You've at some level realized that what I'm chasing is perhaps, I'm just going to mute. Yeah. So what I'm chasing is all these external things and fame or money and all these things for happiness. Maybe that's not where it's found. So some amount of disillusionment must have happened for one to come to Vedanta and become interested in it.
So Spannaji, I have a question. Like, I still feel difficult to believe that, I mean, not believe, but comprehend how can we feel this unlimited happiness. Of course, we are all seeking it, but like feeling that unlimited happiness, it's something which I feel a bit difficult to comprehend because like I've sort of heard or felt at a lot of places that when you're feeling too happy, then there's a certain amount of then immediately after that or something that you feel extreme sorrow or something like that which happens to us. So that's why it's just a bit difficult to comprehend that unlimited happiness. Like, what if it's followed by that sorrow, extreme sorrow as well?
So these are all the case where that would happen is the Vishaya Ananda, right? Is, if you remember, we talked about Vijaya Ananda much earlier, which is Ananda, which is experienced because of the external world. And it was riddled with the three doshas. So I won't get into them again, but that's not the kind of Ananda we're talking about. That Vishaya Ananda was also subject to gradation, Priya, Moda, Pramoda. Right. So it is subject, that Vishaya Ananda is subject to arrival and departure. So that's why the better translation for Ananda is that we talk about in Satchit Ananda is wholeness instead of happiness.
Okay.
So what we are trying to do through all this Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam that you will do is you don't have to do anything to achieve this Ananda, right? You already are this Ananda. That's what Shastra is telling you. All you have to do is remove that ignorance which tells you that you are apurna, that you are limited in some way. Once that ignorance is removed and you can claim your nature as this wholeness, that Ananda arriving from that wholeness is synonymous. It doesn't even come as a result of that wholeness. It's just synonymous with that wholeness. Because once you accept that I am this wholeness, I am Purnaha, what will you desire? Right? What will you think when you realize that there is nothing external to you? What will you seek? What will you be afraid of? What has a capacity to cause you any sorrow?
Right.
So the message itself is very simple, but not so simple to understand, which is why we do this systematic study over many, many years. And Shastra will give you this same beautiful knowledge of your true nature in so many different forms till, and you will understand it in gradations. And you'll experience the benefits also.
Also, one more question. So, in the Panch Kosha, we call the last, the most subtle sheath as the Anandamaya Kosha. And here also we're referring to Anand. So, but there we also called it as ignorance as well.
Right.
So,
So
just confused between, like, we're using the same word, but in two different contexts.
so that was called Anandamaya Kosha because the experience of deep sleep is characterized by two things, right? It's characterized by ignorance. You are aware that I did not know anything in deep sleep. And it is also characterized by this feeling of happiness, bliss, right? You'll say when you've had good deep sleep, you'll wake up and say, there's that feeling of sukham. You'll say, I slept very well, I felt very peaceful, right? So these two experiences these two subtle vrittis are still registered in deep sleep, which is why it's called Anandamaya Kosha. But it's not to be confused with the same as Ananda of Satchitananda. Nagaraji says that is why it's called aprameya, unimaginable, but we try to comprehend with our limited mind attached to this small sharira. Yeah, it's true. Yes, it is not really perceivable by the senses. It is called ashabdaha in certain Upanishads, that it cannot really be talked about in words. Yet we must talk about it. Okay, there's no more questions. We can end our class here. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Om Tat Sat. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you,
and week ahead.
Spandanaji. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Spandanaji.